The Ruger Mini-14 is one of those rifles that people either understand immediately or dismiss too quickly. On paper, it should not win many arguments against the AR-15. The AR is lighter in many configurations, easier to customize, easier to accurize, easier to support with parts, and backed by one of the largest aftermarket ecosystems in the firearms world. If the debate is only about modularity, competition performance, accessories, and pure efficiency, the AR-15 usually walks away with the trophy before the conversation even begins. But that is exactly why the Mini-14 remains interesting. It does not beat the AR by becoming a better AR. It survives because it represents a completely different idea of what a lightweight semi-automatic rifle can be. Most people compare the Mini-14 and the AR-15 the wrong way. They treat the Mini as if it is a failed attempt to copy the AR platform, when that was never really the point. The Mini-14 belongs to a different design philosophy. It feels less like a modular fighting rifle and more like a traditional utility carbine. Its lines are familiar, its controls feel closer to older sporting rifles, its Garand-inspired action gives it a mechanical personality that the AR does not try to have. The AR-15 is a system, the Mini-14 is a rifle. That difference sounds simple, but it changes the way people experience the gun. One invites modification, the other invites use. That is the hidden conflict behind the Mini-14 versus AR-15 debate. The AR-15 is objectively better at many measurable things, but the Mini-14 offers something harder to measure: simplicity of identity. An AR can be almost anything. That is its greatest strength and, for some owners, its quiet weakness. It can be a lightweight carbine, a precision build, a defensive rifle, a hunting rifle, a competition platform, or an accessory host. But that flexibility can become a rabbit hole. The rifle is never finished. There is always a better trigger, a different optic, a new rail, another stock, another barrel profile, another gas system length. The AR ecosystem is powerful, but it can turn ownership into constant optimization. The Mini-14 resists that. It does not ask the shooter to build an identity around endless upgrades. It arrives as a recognizable, self-contained rifle. That can frustrate the enthusiast who wants to tune every detail, but it can appeal strongly to the person who wants a handy semi-auto that feels complete without becoming a project. In that sense, the Mini-14's limitations are part of its character. It is not the rifle for someone who wants to configure every inch of the platform. It is the rifle for someone who values a more traditional shape, a familiar stock, and a design that does not look like it came from the modern tactical catalog. That traditional appearance is one of the biggest reasons the Mini-14 still matters. To some shooters, looks are superficial. To others, they affect where and how a rifle fits into real life. A Mini-14 with a wood or conventional synthetic stock often reads differently than an AR-15. It can feel more like a ranch rifle, a truck rifle where lawful, or a practical field carbine than a modern tactical platform. That does not change what the rifle is mechanically capable of, and it should never be used to ignore responsibility or safety. But perception matters. In some households, regions, or social environments, a rifle that looks traditional may be easier to explain, easier to accept, and easier to live with. The AR-15's appearance has become politically and culturally charged in a way the Mini-14 often avoids. That does not mean the Mini is immune from controversy, and it does not mean regulations are simple or consistent. But the Mini-14 occupies a strange space in American gun culture. It fires similar cartridges, fills similar roles, and can use detachable magazines, yet its profile is less likely to trigger the same immediate reaction from people who judge firearms by appearance. That is not a ballistic advantage. It is a cultural advantage. And in the real world, cultural friction can influence what people buy just as much as technical performance. There is also the matter of handling. A traditional stocked Mini-14 feels different in the hands than a typical AR. The grip angle, stock shape, balance, and sighting posture give it more of a classic rifle feel. Some shooters simply prefer that. They do not want a pistol grip. They do not want a collapsible stock. They do not want rails on every side. They want a rifle that shoulders naturally, carries easily, and points like something they grew up understanding. The AR may be more adaptable to different body types and shooting styles, especially with adjustable furniture, but the Mini offers a kind of intuitive familiarity that many people value. Reliability is another area where the Mini-14 built much of its reputation. The Garand-style rotating bolt and operating system have long appealed to shooters who like rugged mechanical designs. The rifle has often been associated with ranch use, rough handling, and general utility rather than delicate bench rest work. That reputation matters, even though modern AR-15s from quality manufacturers are also highly reliable when maintained and properly set up. The mistake is saying the Mini is reliable and the AR is not. That is too simplistic. The better point is that the Mini's reliability feels different. It feels mechanical, exposed, and old school, while the AR's reliability comes from a more modular, more standardized, and more widely refined system. But this is where honesty matters. The Mini-14 is not perfect, and pretending it is only weakens the argument. Older Mini-14s had a reputation for inconsistent accuracy compared with modern ARs. Ruger improved the platform over time, but the AR-15 still has a major advantage if the goal is precision, barrel options, trigger upgrades, free-float handguards, and optic-ready configurations. The AR is easier to tailor for accuracy because the platform was practically built for modular refinement. A shooter who wants to stretch performance, compete seriously, or build a specific purpose rifle will almost always find the AR easier to work with. The Mini can be accurate enough for many practical uses, but the AR is easier to make precise. That is why the word smashes is misleading. The Mini-14 does not smash the AR-15 in the technical sense. It does not dominate the AR in parts availability, magazine cost, accessory support, modularity, precision potential, or widespread training infrastructure. Those are real advantages, and anyone choosing between the two should admit them. But the Mini can beat the AR in a different category, the category of emotional fit. Some people do not want the most modular rifle. They want the rifle that makes sense to them the moment they pick it up. They want something familiar, durable, simple in presentation, and useful without becoming a lifestyle. The magazine issue shows how different the platforms really are. AR-15 magazines are everywhere, affordable, standardized, and available in countless variations. That is a massive advantage. Mini-14 magazines, especially high-quality factory magazines, tend to be more expensive and less universal. For the AR, magazines are part of the platform's strength. For the Mini, they are part of the ownership cost. That does not make the Mini a bad rifle, but it does mean the buyer needs to be realistic. The rifle may feel simpler, but supporting it can sometimes cost more. That is a classic Mini-14 trade-off. Less temptation to modify, but fewer cheap ecosystem advantages. The aftermarket tells the same story. The AR-15 world is practically unlimited. You can change almost everything. The Mini-14 has aftermarket support, but it is not even close to the same universe. For some shooters, that is a deal breaker. For others, it is a relief. The AR owner can chase endless improvement. The Mini owner is more likely to accept the rifle as it is. Neither approach is automatically superior. One is for the tinkerer, builder, competitor, or optimizer. The other is for the person who values a rifle that feels finished. The irony is that the AR's greatest strength can become a distraction if the owner spends more time configuring the rifle than actually shooting it. The Mini-14 also has a certain mechanical charm that cannot be ignored. Firearms are tools, but they are also objects people form attachments to. The sound of the action, the shape of the stock, the way the rifle cycles, the way it balances, and the connection to older American service rifle design all give the Mini a personality. The AR-15 is brilliant because it is efficient. The Mini-14 is appealing because it feels alive in a different way. That may not matter to everyone, but it matters to enough people that the rifle has survived decades of competition from a platform that should have erased it. Where the Mini-14 makes the strongest practical argument is as a general-purpose utility rifle for the shooter who does not need the AR's full ecosystem. For ranch work, casual range use, field carry, pest control where lawful in ownership by people who prefer traditional controls and styling, it can make real sense. It is not trying to be the ultimate competition carbine or the most customizable defensive rifle. It is a handy semi-auto that gives the shooter useful capability in a familiar package. That is a narrower role than the AR's role, but narrower does not mean useless. Sometimes a rifle becomes more appealing because it does fewer things and does them with a clearer identity. The AR-15, by contrast, is the more rational choice for many buyers. It is easier to support, easier to upgrade, easier to equip with modern optics and lights, easier to train with using common doctrine, and easier to repair with widely available parts. If someone wants the most practical semi-auto rifle ecosystem in America, the AR remains extremely hard to beat. That is the truth Mini-14 fans should not avoid. But the reverse is also true. If someone wants a semi-auto 223 or 5.56 rifle that feels less tactical, more traditional and more like a classic utility carbine, the AR does not fully replace the Mini. It can outperform it, but it cannot become it. That is the twist in the whole debate. The Mini-14's advantage is not that it is better than the AR-15 at being modern. Its advantage is that it refuses to be absorbed by modern rifle culture completely. It offers a different emotional and practical path. Less modular, less common, often more expensive to feed with magazines, not as easy to accurize, but also less visually aggressive, more traditional in handling, mechanically distinctive, and more likely to satisfy the shooter who wants a rifle instead of a platform. The AR-15 is the better system. The Mini-14 may be the more satisfying rifle for a certain kind of owner. So does the Ruger Mini-14 smash the AR-15? Not in the way the title suggests. The AR wins too many objective categories for that claim, to be honest. But the Mini-14 does expose something important about the AR's dominance. It reminds us that the best rifle is not always the one with the most accessories, the biggest aftermarket, or the highest performance ceiling. Sometimes the better choice is the one that fits the owner's habits, environment, preferences, and sense of purpose. The Mini-14 survives because it answers a question the AR does not always answer well. What if you want a capable semi-auto rifle without entering the endless world of tactical optimization? In the end, the Mini-14 does not need to defeat the AR-15 to justify its existence. It only needs to offer a different kind of value, and it does. It offers tradition in a modern chambering, utility without the same visual baggage, mechanical character without constant customization pressure, and enough practical performance for people whose needs are not defined by competition stages or accessory catalogs. The AR-15 is the obvious answer for many shooters, but the Mini-14 is the reminder that obvious answers are not always the only ones worth choosing. Sometimes a rifle wins not by being the most advanced, but by being the one people actually want to pick up, carry, and keep.